call is now being recorded.
Yo, yo.
Yo.
This is the Channel 10 podcast special edition. I guess the Baltimore edition. Once again, make sure you check out channel10podcast.com and you know the rest. Look for us wherever you are online. Since we last spoke, it's been one hell of a week, wouldn't you say?
You've been keeping me updated on everything that's been going on.
Yeah,
all throughout the week.
It's definitely been something, I must say. Like, you know, on the last episode, we recorded it on Sunday, and this was like the day after the protest that happened on Saturday, and you know, we were getting into various things that have to do with, you know, just police brutality and, you know, the Freddie Gray situation and everything in general. And just the next day, you know, it turned into something completely different. The world is watching our city right now. And I guess, you know, going from my perspective, everything, you know, it started off at Mondawmin Mall. And, you know, we grew up the street from Mondawmin Mall. We used to walk there and all that. And, you know, I had to go drive past Mondawmin to pick my mother up from work. So I was like, let me avoid it. So I avoided Mondawmin Mall, going there, and then I had to take her, you know, where she had to go. So I was going to have to go past Mondawmin again. So I said, let me avoid that. So I'm driving up North Avenue, and I end up busting a left up Fulton to hit I guess, what street is that? Druid Hill Avenue, so I could get on the 29th Street Bridge, whatever. And, you know, it's just amazing because if I would have been there 20 minutes later, I would have been in the heat. 20 minutes later, I would have been in the heat of everything that happened, like ground zero for, I guess, the beginning of the Baltimore riots. And, you know, it started there, and, you know, I'm keeping up with everything that's going on. And throughout the night, you're looking at the news and all of that, and you just see the city looking like it's up in flames.
Yeah.
Like, you know, at that moment, I'm just thinking, you know, how could this all be happening? And then I guess I have a different perspective because, you know, that night, for completely unrelated reasons, I ended up having to be in emergency room for a long time. And so I'm just seeing, like, people come in with various injuries related to the riots. And I'm talking to this guy. He asked me to use my phone charger. So, you know, he starts talking to me. He's talking about he messed his leg up. So I didn't ask him or anything like that, even though I was kind of curious. So he tells me, yeah, man, I messed my leg up hopping out a window. I was like, for real? He was like, yeah, actually hopping in the window. I was like, damn. And he was like, yeah, we were at the Shoe City in the West Side Shopping Center, and you know, I was down there. You know, they took the trash can, they busted out the windows, and he was telling me like how crazy it was because, you know, when you bust out a window, it just all doesn't, you know, come out of the frame. You're going to have jagged edges at the top, and they might fall on you. So he said, you know, we're jumping through, and it's jagged, glass falling everywhere. And he was talking about how somebody fell. He was like, yeah, it was a big girl. She fell, and so people were using her as a springboard to jump into the store. So he said he was the second to last person to get in. And he said, but the way he landed on her, but she was, like, getting up. And he, like, twisted his ankle or his leg some type of way. He knew it was hurt, but he could still stand on it. So he said he starts grabbing up all his shoes and all of that. And he hears the police there. He said he had only been in there a couple seconds and the cops came. So, unfortunately he had to drop all his stolen merchandise. And he was trying to hop out the window, but he couldn't do it. So he said a stranger helps him up because, his leg is hurting. And he said as people are hopping out the window, the police are beating him with billy clubs and then arresting him. So the guy helps him up so he can, hop out the window. And the cops are right there, so he says that he pushes the guy into the cops so he can get arrested, and then he runs and then hides behind a bunch of carts at a Rite Aid, like across the parking lot. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. So he's trying to hide there and call his friends to come get him. And then he said, then some people come over with a trash can. They start busting out the Rite Aid. So he had to run some more and find some bushes, and he, met up with his friends, and that's how he ended up in the emergency room. So I guess that's just some perspective of one of the stories that was going down that night. And,
okay, so...
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, let me ask you this question. Was there
Right.
anything about Freddie Gray, injustice, cops, anything, other than people being beat with billy clubs because they broke into a shoe city?
Nah, the only thing that he said, somebody called him, and he was just like, yeah, man, I did some dumb shit that I'm too old to be doing. So, I'm just thinking about it, like, I guess as the night went on, you started to get more people who were kind of opportunists and look for it as an opportunity to come up on something,
Mm-hmm.
So, and you get people who ain't had nothing, so they're going to go and try to get something if the opportunity presents itself. But, nah, that wasn't, not about Freddie Gray or justice or anything. At least not from his, not anything from the story that he told me. He didn't even really mention it from what I can remember.
Okay.
So I guess that goes into what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of it started, at my dormant and, being there frequently, just, being in high school and, having to use, my dormant station to get home from school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because, my dormant is that's like the perfect breeding ground for the clash between like the school children and the cops because, there's no coming up. A lot of times the cops there were really aggressive towards like a lot of the children.
Right.
To a certain extent, and, I've seen this on and on for maybe damn near 10, 11, 12 years or something like that. And, at least there makes a lot of sense why that happened. And I think this goes back to the last episode where, I mentioned, I think I used an example of how a cop should probably be toward, someone who happens to be there at my dorm, and like the way he approached me, he was just like really nice and he was straightforward, just like he just wanted to know why I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean it was nighttime and I was just kind of standing in the parking lot. So I'm pretty sure they look kind of suspect. But yeah, so I mean I know the way after your story, the way I kind of attacked it, just to see if he was talking anything about injustice or Freddie Gray or anything, it made it seem as if I'm like totally against what's happening or what's going on right now, but I'm not exactly. But I don't know. I'm just really against what you just said with these opportunists who've been coming out as of late just to get things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a conflicting type of thing because, you see the one side of it as one, you see somewhere that you're from and it's, it appears to be going up on, up in flames, especially the way they're broadcasting it on the media. And you hate to see the ramifications of how it's going to affect people's lives. Like the people who have to work there might be out of a job or out of hours or anything like that. And, I know people who lost their employment off of this. But I think also at the same time, there's a reason why this happened, and I think that, we can, I guess, kind of chastise that activity and behavior, but, I think that, and maybe this is their fault too, but, that takes away from the bigger picture of what the issue was in the first place, which, I guess in the beginning, there's, Freddie Gray and what happened with that. But then there's the history of everything that's happened within the Baltimore Police Department. Has been well documented, and it's the documentation has just been increasing over the past couple months with the the revelations of the amount of settlement money that the Baltimore Police Department has had to pay out over the past few years for police brutality. And then, the deaths and the injuries to people who have been in custody to where, maybe there were a couple peaceful protests and things like this, but it just keeps, happening over and over again. So I think this is the bubbling up from, Tyrone West and, everybody who was, roughed up and settled, and then the people who were roughed up and were too afraid to report it to the kids at Mondawmin who were roughed up every day. And then, what they did was they shut down the public transportation. Mondawmin is a major transportation hub. That's the way a lot of these kids were supposed to get home. And so you show up to, try to get home from school, and you're confronted by a bunch of police officers who were there because of, rumors of the purge or whatever that there was, that was going to happen. And so they shut down transportation, so you're out here stranded, and you have these cops looking at you like you're crazy. So, it's kind of like they provoked the whole thing to even happen, So it's like, it has me thinking, like, is this some type of setup, or is this some type of mishandling, or what? Because, it started off, at least this part of it, started off with a bunch of teenagers. And, there were these rumors of the purge that was going to happen or whatever, but it just wildly escalated into something else, and now the news is on it, and things are being spun in the media. Our city has been often maligned throughout the years, and it's like this is another stain on it. But it's also actually shedding light onto things on a national level, to where you have the president of the United States talking about it. So like you said earlier, I guess before we started recording, for all this trouble, some change better happen.
Yeah, man, I don't know, man. It's, first of all, it's funny to me, like, we see all these cops in these pictures, like, just in droves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to believe that the city has these many cops, because these motherfuckers are never around at the right time.
I mean, well, see now, are you talking about before they brought in all the cops, or like the pictures now?
Oh, before. I'm talking about like the first day.
Okay.
There were quite a bit of cops.
Yeah, there were a lot of cops out there.
I mean, they keep talking about they have a shortage, and I'm sure they do, but just to see, the amount of cops in that one area, or just like in various areas before they started calling in other cops from other places, it just makes me wonder, like, where are all these motherfuckers when, injustice is happening all throughout the city? things that actually could use a cop, but they're never around. But then whenever you see more than one of them, they want to pull over one car that has one person in it with probably a child.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to, I guess, the culture of the police department and how, something drastic has to happen to change it. And it's like, I hate to see everything that's happening, and I hate to feel the effects of it, just in my personal life. But it's like, it's almost a last resort. It's like a cry for help. It's like, we done tried everything, and this is all we got. So, in order to stop those types of things happening, like, every time you drive past, like you were saying, like, you have all these police cars that's on one person, and it's like, I always look like, this probably isn't necessary, like, they just messing with this person for real. Because, I've had similar situations being pulled over by a whole bunch of cops, and it's like, for what?
Yeah.
Looking for something, or you're trying to provoke something so that something can happen. And it's like, it's like they poke the sleeping bear, one too many times.
Yeah. Well, and this also goes to the political system in Baltimore. And I've told my mother over the years, I said that I don't think Baltimore will get any better. Do you hear that?
I did hear that.
Well, I'm assuming that's recorded too, right?
I don't know. It's like a scratching thing or something. I don't know. Maybe they're listening.
Yes. I didn't think about that. Well, this is really a real hip-hop podcast now. Got scratches going on throughout the our conversation. But yeah, I've been telling my mother for years that, I really think that Baltimore could actually use, just a large purge of the entire political system, city council, mayor, and all this other type of stuff, and install, Republicans in there. Because I think the city got too, I think the culture of the city just got a bit too comfortable for, the Democratic Party or some new party should be in there for 1 or 2 terms or something. Because now, you see people in these various forms of power, and they're they're so-and-so's homeboy, and they just know they're going to be reelected next year, and no one really cares, and they'll probably just wait until Rollins, Blake, or whoever mayor is steps down with something bad happens to her. And this is what's been going on since past 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, it might even be longer than that. It was interesting. I was listening to Sean Hannity the other day, and he was pretty much making a similar point that, for the past 40 years or whatever, Baltimore has been a democratically controlled city, and you see the situations getting worse and worse and worse under the same type of politics of the same type of people, well, not even politics, but policies from the same types of people who come from a certain political lineage, so it's like each one is just furthering the, pretty much the same agenda as the one before, and, if it's not working, why not try something different?
I mean, yeah, and, just from what I can recall, the different mayors and their various agendas, and, just recalling, I guess, what Dixon has said over the years, and, what Rollins Blake, what she's always ran under. And a lot of it has always been based around bringing more money to the city. And the city needs so much money because, they're in some weird deficit. I'm pretty sure the city still is. But it's been such a big part of, what these mayors who have been all within the same party, what they ran on, that they start kind of sounding Republican in a way. And they keep talking about bringing this big business and all this other type of crazy stuff into the city.
Yeah, and offering all these tax breaks to different businesses and stuff. And then, not even in terms of that, but also, didn't he have the zero tolerance policy when it came to crime?
Well, yes, it's that too, and then it's some system that O'Malley created with some people that I think Obama is trying to implement into like the federal system. And so I know he got like a whole bunch of cool points for that, but yeah, because I know that crime supposedly went down under his reign in Baltimore.
But like, I didn't get a chance to read the article, but David Simon, he wrote some scathing article about O'Malley and how it's basically his policies that led to this, and I think part of it probably has something to do with the zero tolerance. And I'm not exactly sure, what he said, but just the whole thing with the zero tolerance, it makes me think of Rudy Giuliani in New York and how he can brag and boast about how crime is going down, but, you look at his policing tactics and where that led to with the stops and frisks and everything and, the deaths of, unneeded deaths and, people's rights being violated. Because of that, the stop and frisk and the zero tolerances and the broken glass theories and people getting all kind of jail time for some weed, and you have one, Republican and one Democrat, both mayors of large cities, and it's like there's no difference.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but, I guess, going back to the protests, man, it's just like, since, I guess this is the third night of the curfew that's going on, and this is like, one of the consequences of, the actions of the few who, were like the guy who, I described earlier, but, man, this shit sucks. Like,
I can imagine.
Like, I remember the first night of the curfew, I was at my girl's house and, all outside, you just hear cars and, dirt bikes and stuff just speeding, trying to rush and get home so you won't get arrested. And, they got the National Guard here and all these other, officers from other agencies, and it's like, it almost feels like we're being occupied by an invading army. And what made it worse is earlier, there was a press conference I was watching, I think it was from the police commissioner and the adjutant general of the National Guard, and they were talking about what their strategy is going to be for withdrawing the troops. And, basically they're not, like, they don't know when they're going to start withdrawing them, but they're not going to offer, like, a definitive date probably to the public, and it's not going to be all at one time. They're going to withdraw in stages to make sure that, everything remains calm. And I'm like, hold on, this sounds like when Obama was talking about how he's going to withdraw the troops from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Like, you have this occupying force that is supposed to be peacekeepers and everything like that, and then you're going to withdraw them in stages to try to, maintain order and all that other type of stuff. And I'm just like, I feel like the treatment that we're getting is almost like we're not a part of whatever this is supposed to be, like whatever America is supposed to be. Like, it's almost like we're another country, and it's a horrible feeling. Like, I don't feel free right now. And then, oh, go ahead.
When I was talking to my friend the other day, and I was telling her that what's interesting about Baltimore too is the fact that it's an independent city.
Right.
And because I was, we kind of got into the bickering that's been going on between Rawlings, Blake, and Hogan. And I'm not entirely sure, but if I recall it, the way an independent city works, at least Baltimore, is the fact that the mayor has way more power, you know, compared to like a regular mayor of just like a regular city. And so I'm not entirely sure though, but I'm assuming that he has like this weird power of being in power of an independent city, that she kind of she can kind of tell Hogan what she's going to do about what's going on in the city. Is that true? Do you know?
I think it was true at first. And I guess one of the criticisms has been that she took so long to call him and, you know, to get the National Guard activated. And, of course, he flipped that for his political gain, talking about, you know, we tried to call twice and she didn't answer. And, you know, we were all ready. We were just waiting for that call. And then he said, I'm taking over now, and I'm moving my office to Baltimore in the morning, and, you know, we're not going to have this. And then the other day, it might have been yesterday, there were pictures of Larry Hogan down Gilmore Homes talking to people and giving them hugs and stuff like that and smiling with them. So, yes, Larry Hogan down on Gilmore.
Of course.
And it was just like, I was just like, man, you know, they really threw her under the bus, but she snapped back earlier today and she said something to the effect of, you know, I understand, you know, Larry Hogan, you know, he's a new executive and he's just really excited right now. He just wants to, you know, make sure he doesn't look bad, you know, having just gotten into office. So I thought that was interesting.
I mean, well, she has a point, but I think that her career is like fucked. Yeah, that's what it seems. But you know, I mean, because like I don't know, when it comes like to her and like in my criticism, I just always harken back to that derby that she had, the first one. Oh yeah, the Baltimore Grand Prix. Yeah, and just how bad it was. It was just horrible, and they didn't even make no fucking money off of it. It was. Yeah, I mean, I think the plan was that it was probably going to lose money for the first 3 or 4 years or something like that, but I don't think it made it to the third year. Yeah. Now, I don't know, like, one thing, I did commend her for taking a big risk. You know, sometimes you're going to fail. But, you know, I was like, you know, this is probably not a good idea, but she's just like, F it, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to go hard, and, you know, maybe it'll work, but, you know, I had to give her her props for that. But I think Baltimore just wasn't ready for that at that time. Like, she has a vision of Baltimore and what she's trying to make it, and try to fit it into a certain mold, but, you know, I guess another criticism of her has been how she's built up Harbor East and is trying to gentrify, or as a lot of people would say, her only focus is bringing in more white people at the expense of investing in, you know, some of the actual neighborhoods where people are out here, you know, really struggling and suffering. And, you know, these are the neighborhoods that are, you know, where people are rioting and burning down and looting and stuff like that. And another thing that I was thinking, and I saw this picture that kind of brought this to light, is like, I saw a picture of a neighborhood, and it was all boarded up houses, and it said, this is what it looked like before the riots, and it just looked all fucked up. So yeah. It just reminded me of how, you know, I would bring my friends from other cities to Baltimore, and they would always say, it looks like a bomb hit it. And I'm just like, that kind of changed my perspective too a little bit. Like, damn, it's fucked up what's going on, but it's like, you know, it was already fucked up to begin with, you know? Yeah. It's just like, I don't know, like, you know, at least, you know, some more attention is being brought to it. And I think it's to a point where, you know, the eyes are on things and are on people and processes to where, you know, whatever
corruption, not whatever corruption, but, you know, a lot of corruption that's going on, they're not going to be able to get away with that for very much longer. I mean, I guess the pessimist to me is saying, yeah, they're going to knock out all the stuff that's going on now, and it's going to make room for new stuff. But, you know, I feel like something has to happen as a result of all this.
Well, I don't know, man. It's just like the string of various Baltimore mayors that have they've just had their reign of fuckery on the city to a certain extent. Because, you know, based on what older Baltimoreans will tell you, they'll tell you that, you know, Kurt Schmoke was the reason for these boarded up houses.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at Schmoke, Dixon came out of Schmoke, right?
I thought it was O'Malley.
Oh, that's right, yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting that he was even a damn mayor sometimes.
Yeah.
O'Malley, and of course he's the white one, and he's the one that gets the most attention, of course. O'Malley, and then Dixon, and then Rawlings Blake, and they really haven't exactly done a lot. But I do know Rawlings Blake. I remember some years ago she was implementing this type of strategy to bring in I think about 10,000 immigrants over like the next several years to try to boost Baltimore's economic activity or something like that. From what I can recall in the article that I read from the Sun like years ago. And maybe it's working a bit more. Maybe it's working because I know sometimes on the bus you'll see a duplicate Spanish version of an ad on the bus nowadays.
Yeah, I noticed that for the first time the other day. I was riding the light rail, and I noticed that they started having the announcements and stuff in Spanish.
Oh wow!
I think that's a new thing. I don't know. It's like, you know, trying to upgrade Baltimore to, I guess, a more cosmopolitan type of place. And I guess, you know, the city is going through change and growing pains and stuff like that. But like, you know, I think with all of this media hype that Baltimore has been getting and the bad rap that we get, you know, Baltimore is a city of education, you know? Like, we have Johns Hopkins, we have Morgan, we have Coppin, we have Loyola, we have Notre Dame, you know, we have all these educational institutions of higher learning. You know, they talk about the school system, but, you know, we do have some pretty good schools here and there. And I think that part, a lot of times it gets neglected, you know, in favor of, you know, I guess what is the media hype and the media sensationalism. And I think that, you know, in these cases where, I guess, you know, going back to the Freddie Gray, you know, I think that educational part of the city, you know, you have all these writers and thinkers and people here who are able to take the story and the narrative and flip it. And, you know, when various aspects of the media try to, or, you know, the police, they try to, you know, tell lies about various things, or they try to spin a story a certain way, it's like, boom, you know, they're getting checked intellectually and fact-wise because, you know, we have those people here. And hopefully, you know, this translates into, you know, more people fact-checking and, you know, coming at the people of power and, you know, really keeping them on their toes to where, you know, you can't get over on the people that for very much, you know, for that much longer. Because, like, they've done some crazy things. Like, I guess the first night of the protest, some type of debris caught on fire in front of the library at Penn North. And they tried to say that the protesters were throwing fireworks and that's what set it on fire. And the Baltimore police put that up on their Twitter, and then, you know, some reporter put up, no, it wasn't that. It was the pepper bombs that the police were throwing at the protesters, and that's why the cop was so quick to go over there and put it out. So it's like a whole bunch of little things, like, I think the Washington Post put up something about, you know, Freddie Gray's spinal injuries or something like that. Previously he had spine surgery and wasn't supposed to be on there, and they brought something up, but then people fact-checked that really quickly, like, no, that's not the case. You know, the case that they're talking about, the medical thing, has something to do with, like, some lead paint or something like that. And, you know, there's just been these instances of fact-checking the media and, you know, refuting their lies. So hopefully, you know, a tradition of that will, you know, has been birthed or has been strengthened and will continue throughout all of this.
Yeah. You know, we talk about this, and I find it rather interesting that you know, you mentioned, like, you know, we had, like, the city paper, you know, which was an underground newspaper and whatnot, and now it's a part of, you know, the Baltimore Sun. And, you know, I remember that, you know, I think it was one of the editors, whatnot, of the city paper, they had that op-ed in the New York Times, sometime last year. And he went, you know, he went on about, you know, what can happen about when it comes to media and how, you know, I guess their journalistic standards can be kind of hindered because of them being involved with a part of a large conglomerate.
Yeah.
And so although this is going on right now, in the Sun, they are very quick to point out various government things that go on in Baltimore, but then I'm just thinking that, you know, sooner or later, since you know, I guess over time, maybe they'll try to phase out a lot of the people who are involved in the city paper who still have that, you know, I guess that independent streak of being an independent newspaper. Once that dies out, will there really be this type of thing anymore, you know, at all?
Well, I mean, I guess you have to go back because, you know, the city paper is owned by the same, like, is it under the Baltimore Sun now, or is it just owned by the same company?
I think it is owned by the same company, because I know is the Beast still around, or did they phase that out?
I haven't seen it in a long time. I do think it is still around though, but I know that's directly under the Sun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I want to ask you, what do you think about the Baltimore Sun?
Well, this is the thing about the Sun to me. You know, and come to think about it, I'm not entirely sure if it's just because of the culture of I guess what is the Baltimore political system. You know, they do it seems like at least once a year now, once or twice a year, they come up with some type of scathing story that goes on and on and on, maybe like a month or so, about some type of injustice within the political system or whatever like that. And then they talk about, you know, Baltimore's political system and what needs to be changed, and they'll talk about the O'Malleys and the Sheila Dixons and so on and so forth. And then when the new people come around to become mayor or governor, they go with the best bet, it seems. You know, I'm not entirely sure if it's right. Sometimes to me it seems like they just endorse people as if they're like, you know, they get paid off to do it. And, you know, and we do have to still think that, you know, although Baltimore is Baltimore, the Baltimore Sun they do what they do, you know, it's still a part of this large conglomerate that owns damn near everything all throughout the country.
That's true. They're under Tribune, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something to always keep in mind, but, like, I don't know, like, I guess how you were talking about how they come out with, like, these scathing things that last for a long time. There's a term for that. I can't think of it right now. But, you know, those ongoing stories where they unveil some type of corruption. And I guess, you know, the last one that they did was the one that was talking about these payouts and everything like that, and they're talking about and I remember them talking about it on the Larry Young Morning Show quite a bit. But I don't know. I think those things are very important, and then just the way that they have people like Justin Fenton and Colin Campbell and a couple other reporters, like how they're always out there on the streets and tweeting and updating about what's going on, and really using, I guess, social networking and everything to put give you the stories real time, and then they might write something up to, I guess, contextualize it later. And a lot of times, it does seem like they do expose things that the government probably, wouldn't want exposed, or at least not exposed so soon or in the manner that they expose them. So, it is a part of, a larger conglomerate, but I find myself giving them props for a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like a WJZ or a Fox News or something like that. Like, I think when it comes to major traditional media in the city, that's all, we've got. And to be honest, like, this whole thing is the first time I've checked out one of these local news programs on TV in years. Like, at least maybe even a decade, like maybe since I was a teenager. It's probably the last time I actually watched like Fox 45 News or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but then you still constantly pick up, I'm a Baltimore Sun or whatever like that.
Yeah, always checking the Sun, or checking the checking out their website and stuff like that. Yeah, Baltimore Sun and the city paper as well. But I don't know, that I guess the landscape of the media in the city is pretty interesting. And I guess looking at the way local media has been covering everything versus national media is pretty interesting, because if you look at like a CNN or an MSNBC, you'd have thought Baltimore blew up. like it's not here anymore or something like that. But you can drive around all day within city limits and not see any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And not even know that it's going on, And it's interesting too, as part of the curfew, I've seen things on Twitter like the curfew isn't being enforced in various areas, such as Canton, Fells Point, Roland Park.
Of course.
So, it really, I don't know, I've had a weird, Hunger Games type of feeling when it comes to all this,
Mm-hmm.
And, Jon Stewart had an interesting piece about it, and this is even before the riots happened. This just had to do with the coverage that CNN gave to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and they had like this fake, the lady on the Hunger Games who's like, I guess in charge of the like the district for the rich people, and they're broadcasting and everything, and she's like, yes, yes, people of Baltimore, your rioting will not infringe or, disrupt the festivities that are going on in the capital city. You must pay homage to the capital city or something like that. And it's like, how that's like the district of the rich people, and then 40 miles away you have Baltimore, which is like District 13 or whatever district where there's the uprising and everything like that, and the tributes are dying out here at the hands of the Baltimore police, and it's just an interesting type of thing that's going on. And then I get that feeling as well I was listening to the radio and they were talking about traffic after curfew. They're talking about, oh yeah, I was looking on 695, and I'm like, 695? Why are you talking about traffic on 695? There's a curfew. And I remember 695 goes around the city, but it's in the county. So there's a whole group of people in the Baltimore metropolitan area that don't have to go by this curfew, and it's all based off the lines that are drawn by whichever district you happen to live in. So, you know, I guess this goes into how I was thinking about this weekend, you know, going to a bar or something to go see the Floyd Mayweather fight. All the bars are going to be shut down by 10 on Saturday, so I would have to go out into the county to watch it. And then I can't come back within city limits until 5 in the morning, or I might get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it's just like, damn, like, what kind of world am I living in? Like, this, you know, it's really not freedom, and I don't know what to think about it. Like, you know, on one hand, it's like these looting ass, robbing ass niggas, you know, fuck shit up for everybody. And then on the other hand, it's like this might be a conspiracy by the government to enact martial law, even though they explicitly said it's not martial law. But they got us, you know, they treating us, like I said earlier, like this is Afghanistan, and they got the troops here, and they're going to start moving back out in waves, and they're not going to say when it's going to be. Like, it's just a mess. Like, I don't know who to point the finger at or who to blame. All I know is I'm not free right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think you're going to go out and watch the fight?
I don't know, man. I don't want to miss it, and I feel like, you know, going through the trouble of trying to watch it live via stream or something like that is going to be too much work, and it's not going to be as satisfying as you seeing it live as it's intended. So, my initial plan was, you know, since my girl, she was kind of near the city-county line, I was going to go out to the county somewhere, watch it, and then sneak back into the city and just go right to her house. And she was like, no. She was like, I'm not in favor of doing dumb shit or putting yourself in, you know, dumb, risky situations. So I'm not going to condone that. And I don't have any bail money. So, I think what I might do is go watch it and then come back to my mother's friend's house and chill out there until 5 in the morning. And, then come back into the city. But it's just like, it's just not right, you know? Like, if I'm hungry right now, I should be able to leave the house right now and go get something to eat, but I can't do that. And I always was wondering, like, would you be okay on your porch or on your stoop? But
I was going to ask you the same exact question.
Yeah, so earlier we're watching the news and they said, no, you can't be sitting out on your stoop. You know, you can't be on your porch. They don't want you on your balcony.
Well, that's kind of, that's weird because the balcony, like a balcony and your porch, I consider a part of your house.
I mean, your stoop should be a part of your house.
I mean, that too.
That's because, like, your house.
Yeah, because the Maryland drinking law, if you go and look at the actual law, technically, if like a parent gives you alcohol, at least in Maryland, it's legal, but it just has to be within the limits of your house, like the confines of your household, but that also includes the porch or the stoop.
Nah, man, I've been out, and I've been out on people's porches, and like you gotta like put the liquor under the thing or like the alcohol under the thing, you know, so the cops can't see it. Because if they drive by and they see that, you know, I've heard stories of people, you know, getting citations for drinking on their porch.
Hey, look, man, I was done wrong when it came to drinking, and technically it was illegal. what they did, but I couldn't fight it. And we're having riots right now because of the illegal shit that the cops are doing. So I'm not surprised. But no, like, because, you know, when I went to my thing, they, you know, I talked to the law library people, and they looked it up for me of how it's supposed to go. I think I still have it, actually, somewhere.
Oh, man.
But yeah, like, it's like an actual law. I mean, I don't know, but see, that's weird, though. But then, I mean, are you really going to spend the money to try to fight something that petty?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But see, that's what they're banking on. And, like, another thing, too, is I feel like there's a reason why they don't want you on your stoop or outside in any type of capacity. And I guess this is like the conspiracy theorist in me. They don't want you out there because they're doing stuff that they don't want you to see. And, you know, they've been, I've heard that the cops have been extremely, I guess, aggressive towards journalists, especially, you know, ones with cameras and who are taking pictures. And then what they did Monday night to that kid was just crazy. I watched it live. I'm sitting there watching, you know, first off, they tried to make it look like something that it wasn't. Like, Monday night, or not Monday, was it Monday? No, it was Tuesday night, I believe, the first night of the curfew. You know, there were a couple people out after the curfew, and there was a line of officers, and it was kind of like like a face-off or whatever. So, number one, there were more media people out there than actual people who weren't supposed to be out there according to the curfew. But they try to make it like this whole big thing, like the city is about to erupt. But it was really just a couple people versus the police in this one little area. So, this guy starts walking out with his hands up, and he says, you know, I want everybody to listen to me. Everybody listen to me. And he says, hold on, there's a car driving up the street. Oh, man, it's some type of, it's a tow truck. It's interesting, like, anytime a car drives up the street, you know, I go and see, you know, what type of car it is, because nobody's supposed to be driving around. But,
oh, yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, like, this guy, he comes out, and, you know, he's, like, talking to the media, and he's like, everybody, please disperse, please go home. And, you know, everybody's kind of looking at him like, you know, what's going on? What's up with this kid? And, you know, he's out there walking around for a little bit just in the middle of everything. So then all of a sudden, this big, like, Hummer comes and blocks the camera so you can't see him anymore. And then you see, like, some of the officers move and descend upon him. And then all of a sudden the van drives away, or like the Hummer type joint drives away, and the kid is gone. He's gone. Like, yo, I never saw anything like that in my life. Like, a car, and then the people were like, so yeah, the people on the news like, yeah, this car just drove up and drove away, and the kid is gone, and we don't know if they did that on purpose, but it's definitely interesting. Joseph Kent, that's his name. So, Joseph Kent, you know, he's a known activist at Morgan or whatever, and apparently people don't know where he is. And, like, I see his lawyer on Twitter earlier was like, you know, if anybody knows where he is or whatever, you know, he has my cell phone number. Please tell him to call me.
Oh, man.
So, I don't know. I don't know where he is. I guess maybe they found him. Let me just go through here real quick. While in jail, Joseph Kent saying just a little bit of faith to keep his spirits up. Well, I guess he's out now. And, yeah, his lawyers posting up pictures and stuff.
Damn.
Yeah, 14 hours ago. Can someone please tell Joseph to call me? He has my cell number. 11 hours ago. Just spoke with Joseph Kent, back on track. Media interviews forthcoming. Stand by.
So is he talking about what happened to him or what? Or he can't talk about it?
I guess he's going to talk about it.
Oh.
You know, once he does his media stuff and all that. But yeah, this is just, I mean, everything that's just been happening is so weird, and I guess that's one of the weird things. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be more to come. Because, you know, of course the weekend is coming up, so the protests are going to ramp up. And, you know, Al Sharpton, he's about to pop up here and do... he's about to do a march from Baltimore to D.C.
Can you walk that far? It doesn't look like you can.
Well, maybe he won't be walking. I don't know. But, I don't know, maybe he'll get a scooter or something. But yeah, it's supposed to have a march from Baltimore to D.C. I think Jamal Bryant is supposed to have something. I think Black Lawyers for Justice are supposed to have something. So I don't know. You know, it's just a lot of weird stuff happening. Of course, we didn't talk about the weirdest thing that happened, which is the Baltimore Orioles game.
Oh yeah.
Did you watch it?
Did they win? No, man. I mean, I haven't had the time to watch it, but did they win at least?
That's a good question. I don't know. I want to say they did.
I mean, well, I would hope so. I mean, I think it's kind of embarrassing. Like, you know, you're at your home stadium, there's no one there, and people outside of the stadium are rioting around you, and they don't care about what's going on inside.
Oh, man. Yeah, they won. No cheers for Baltimore Orioles during win.
Damn.
But it's like, it's crazy because, you know how we have this ongoing thing about how in the media it's always something crazy that's Baltimore related that makes the city look bad or crazy?
Yeah.
And like, now it's just at an all-time high.
Well, did you hear about, like, you know, like the whole CIA investigation with the prostitution and everything like that?
Oh my goodness, yeah, that was a couple weeks ago, and somebody's child, some politician's child or somebody weren't they busted as part of some type of prostitution thing as well?
I think so, but it's like it's Baltimore related in some weird way because like one of the people who had something to do, who was kind of like high up in the CIA or something like that. She is from Baltimore. Oh
man!
And so she's you know, of course she's getting the boot. And I think she's had her position since, like, you know, I think the Clinton administration and Obama just decided to keep her around so she's been there so long. Or something like that. But yeah, she's from Baltimore, and of course this would have to happen under her reign. Of course, NPR, they made sure they said she was a Baltimore native.
I guess the other thing in Baltimore that's all in the news, and I've heard people bring it up, is about the whole thing from a couple of years ago with the BGF in the prisons.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And how the leader or whatever, you know, he got a couple COs pregnant at the same time, and they're still basically running everything from inside. It's just like, that was a huge national news story.
And then, I mean, this goes into, I mean, it's like Baltimore just has like this curse that like the George put on it or something like that.
Yeah.
And like Billie Holiday was from Baltimore, and although she's seen as like, you know, this famed jazz musician, she still had like this really rough life and her heroin addiction and stuff like that. Edgar Allan Poe died in Baltimore.
What's the Nina Simone did an album called Baltimore.
Yeah, and then
got booed off the stage when she performed it because she was talking about all the trash and everything.
Yeah, and then the Disney guy who song like that you sent me a long time ago, the guy who does all like Toy Story, Paul Newman. Is it Paul Newman?
Oh man, yeah. I forgot all about that.
It's a very depressing song. But yeah, man, I mean, Baltimore just has like a black cloud over its head, but then it's weird because, you know, like the mid 19th century or whatever like that, Baltimore was like, you know, the most poppin' city in the country at one point, if not the world, to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, what happens next, because, like, I don't know, man. It's just crazy because, you know, even after you look at Ferguson and stuff like that, it's just crazy to see that happen here. And, you know, what's going to happen here after, and, you know, is it, you know, we talk about it getting better, you know, politically and stuff like that, but, you know, is it ever really going to get better quality of life-wise to where, you know, the people who have the lowest quality of life, to where their quality of life at least gets a little bit better? Because if their quality of life gets better, it's going to get better for everybody. And, you know, it kind of makes you wonder, like, I guess the opportunities for economic investment in certain areas, or maybe even the city as a whole, like, that's going to dry up. Like, people aren't going to want to build things here or anything like that because, you know, everything that just happened. People aren't going to want to start businesses here, not going to want to move here. You know, they had this whole thing about how they had to change the image of the city after The Wire, but now it's just amplified so much more. And,
yeah,
you know, it's hard sometimes to even combat that image, like, with positivity, even though, you know, it's not all bad. And, you know, there are, you know, a majority of peaceful protests, and protests have been going on every day. Like, every day there's some type of protest, to the point where now, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a huge protest last night in New York. And there's pictures like all these people out in Union Square, and the cops arrested people there. But there's been protests in Chicago, there's been protests in Ferguson, in Minnesota, D.C. So it's like everybody's in solidarity with Baltimore right now, and it's kind of an amazing thing, but it's like a scary thing as well too, because, you know, this thing is nowhere near over. So
yeah, I can only imagine, and that's the thing. I'm still trying to make my my pop-up visit. So I guess we'll see if that works out, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you might be trying to get the fuck out of here.
Well, I did hear that your mother said something to the effect of maybe it's a good thing I just don't come home anyway this summer or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens because, you know, they finished the investigation today, and so they gave the results to the prosecutors. They haven't released it to the public, but I see, like, some things have come out. I haven't really had a chance to look at it and stuff like that. But, you know, if these charges and indictments and eventual conviction or non-conviction and sentencing don't go the right way, oh my goodness.
I mean, I can see them going the right way. I mean, they just kind of have to, just based on the climate of Baltimore anyway. Like, you know, when it came to Trayvon Martin, I had a feeling he was going to get off anyway.
Yeah.
But like this though, I mean, this is like Baltimore. Like this is an all-black town, damn near. So
that's true, but I don't know, man. Crazy things have happened, and you know, if the DA really feels like she doesn't have enough evidence to move forward, and she can't move forward, or you know, even if she does, if the jury can't find enough evidence to move forward, and then you have 6 cops, like each one of these cops, you know, you're gonna have to like figure out who did what to who and all this other type of stuff. Like, are they all equally culpable? Are some of them going to take plea deals and get off scot-free for snitching on the other ones? And then can that even be taken seriously, or is it just going to be somebody trying to get off in less than their time? You know, so I don't know. Like, I can't see it. I mean, I see something happening, but I can't see it being satisfactory completely. I think it's going to be a degree of satisfaction, whether it's 70% or whether it's 90%, but I think that it might be closer to like 60%.
I think there's going to be, dissatisfaction, period, because, I mean, that still doesn't, you know, all the things that have been going on, it still doesn't solve the underlying issue of the institution of racism, the institution of, economic power.
Yeah.
And the Lord knows how you go about trying to fix that. That's a whole nother story, and I guess that's when you get back into abstract concepts. Well, abstract concepts, maybe not so much with economics, but with race.
Yeah.
But I really do think it's really just like the older, the older people who really enable this institution to really thrive the way it is. Now, yes, I know I say this, and this is what the 6th episode now at this point.
Is this the 6th episode? I believe this is the 6th episode. We've done so many, and then we have the other one in the can still. But I think in terms of what we put out, this is episode 6.
Oh yeah, and so I think I mentioned this in the other episode 4 episodes ago, in episode 2, when it was pretty much my episode just about the SAE protests, and then these were young people doing this shit. So I don't know, man.
I guess the young people who are out here protesting and stuff, do you think that they'll get old? And I guess, as they say, when people get older and become more conservative, do you think that part of getting older is perpetuating the systems of inequality and injustice? Because as you get older, you have more to gain from it?
Well, I would say to a certain extent, yeah. But, just like, I think my experience here with the people that, I have to work with, we all come from, different backgrounds, of course. And I'm realizing that, like, a lot of them, they come from areas that don't have black people at all, pretty much. Right. Let alone in an urban area. And so I also think that it also deals with, I guess, like, self-interest and just being disconnected from other cultures that do go on with it all throughout the country. So, I mean, people in Colorado, Minnesota, I mean, come on. Are there really black people in Minnesota like that? Other than people who are like play for the Timberwolves?
Real talk, I thought that team was mostly white like that.
Well, actually, I'm not entirely sure at this point, but just like Minnesota and and I forget that California isn't just San Francisco and LA. They do have like actual rural areas that have ranches and it looks like the West.
Yeah, I mean, when you just think about Maryland, I mean, most of Maryland is not like Baltimore. you don't have to drive very far to get to a rural area. You know, you can start in Baltimore and drive 20, 30 minutes and see farms and people who live a whole nother type of lifestyle and are completely apathetic or just don't understand anything that's going on, you know.
Yeah.
I have a coworker from Carroll County, and she's probably like close to 70 years old, and she was saying, you know, there was no better time to grow up than the 60s. And she was talking about how great it was and all that, and she was like, and you know, race wasn't even an issue. I mean, I didn't really hear or see anything about it. It just wasn't an issue. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, and you know, like even what she said, that really goes into, you know, regional diversity. You know, I told you about the story before about you know, the other woman from Atlanta. Well, I'm assuming she's white, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the white woman I was telling you about from Atlanta, you know, when she had to go through when it came, in the 60s when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And yeah, so I mean, I really think a lot of this really has to deal with regional diversity. Because from what I know, I have yet to really meet anyone in my area that really comes from like an urban setting, except for one probably, or maybe a couple. But for the most part, you know, they live in these really insular areas, and you know, it's kind of it's interesting because, you know, a lot of times when you hear about urban, you know, you read things on urban studies, just, you know, urban life period, and like a big focus is on the insularity of these of like projects and like the way these types of urban areas are built, but no one ever talks about the insularities of these of suburban areas to a certain extent. Not the way they do about urban areas, at least to a certain extent. But at least it seems like when it comes to like suburban areas, like these other types of areas, the insularity is a good thing. But then these urban areas, insularity is a bad thing.
I mean, I think that's a double standard, and you kind of shed light on, I guess, double standards between urban areas and, you know, suburban or rural areas, and really about, you know, just I'll take it even further, because, you know, when you think of areas, you think of class. So, like, you know, when you think of, you know, a suburban type of area, you think of somebody upper middle class. You think of somebody in the projects, you think of lower class. And so somebody from the projects can do the same or similar things that somebody from these other areas can do. Or, you know, one is more acceptable than the other, or one activity or behavior needs to be studied when it's considered completely normal. So when you talk about, you know, the insularity of one area and how they're studying it and they're so fascinated by it, but when you look at the insularity of a gated community in the suburbs, it's like, oh yeah, this is just where we live. And it's funny because you have, you know, the people who are probably doing these studies probably live in an area just as, if not more, insular than the people that they're studying. Which is the weird conundrum. And then, you know, it goes back to, you know, I guess what Ta-Nehisi Coates was saying about how, you know, the people who preach nonviolence in the movement, they stopping halfway. Like, you know, who was violent first? So it's like, you know, a certain class of people, it's okay to be violent, you know, with, you know, oftentimes without provocation or, you know, just reason or cause. But then when you flip it and it happens for people of a certain class, all of a sudden now it's a problem. Now we've got to bring in the National Guard, you know, like, and there's always that argument that people bring up, which is actually very true. You know, when when the students of these colleges riot because their team lost or won, you know, they don't call these people thugs or anything like that, and a lot of times they cause pretty much just as much damage as, you know, has gone on in Baltimore. But the people in Baltimore are thugs and looters and criminals, and everybody else, they get to be college students.
That's good.
Same activities and behavior, but, you know, one is being looked at a certain way.
Yeah. You know, that kind of, you know, it kind of goes into, you know, what I was talking about with someone earlier today about, you know, like how it is being treated here. You know, like, I guess the surprise that I get from various people when they find out I'm a graduate student, and it's to the point that they don't know how to take it. And, you know, just dealing with various racial issues here in Oklahoma. You know, I come across various people who disrespect me, but, you know, I'm this, you know, I guess what you will consider an upstanding citizen who is working on a graduate degree. But no one cares about that. They just see me for, you know, for who I am, and I guess like going back to like these double standards and so on and so forth. Because I mean, you know, sometimes it gets pretty frustrating. You know, you sit up here, you do the so-called right thing that, you know, that you're told to do, and yet people still don't care about it to a certain extent.
It's almost like, you know, it's almost like a caste system. Like, you know, you're not playing by the rules of society. It's like, what are you doing here? You know, you're not one of us. You'll never be one of us. You know, you are of that lower class, that black caste. You're not supposed to be here. And, you know, it's like, you know, at what point will that ever be erased, if ever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like every time you walk through a door, you're crossing an invisible line, or you're crossing, or, you know, maybe even breaking a social contract that has been, you know, established before you were even born. You know, you're not staying to your place, you're not staying to your area. So, you know, I think, you know, you walking in certain places might be an affront to, you know, people's way of life.
I mean, yeah, like I told you about the vegan spot, and like the way this man, like, he looked at me, the way he treated me, it's as if I was, you know, infiltrating the system. You know, of how shit's supposed to go. Like, you know, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be saying this conscious black man with the chew stick in his mouth. He actually knows about healthy eating because I want him to die soon. And also, you know, when I had a conversation, because like, you know, before we recorded, you know, I was telling you about how bad this really is, like the racist shit I go through around here, day and night. And also another element, like, when I've touched on this before, is the Starbucks element. You go into a Starbucks, you know, and you get whatever you're getting, but, you know, half the time I'm the only black guy in there. And even, you know, you may see a couple people coming every now and again, black people, but, you know, they just get their drink and they leave. And, you know, I'm there with all these other white students, you know, studying and doing whatever. And, you know, I come in there with like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books stacked or spread all throughout the table with a writing pad, you know, vigorously writing or typing on my computer or whatever like that. And it's the look I get when older people, I mean, even some younger people, but usually older people, I get mean looks for sitting around and writing as if I'm like writing on the destruction of the white race. And you never know, maybe they could be thinking this, like, seriously. You just never know.
I mean, but you gotta think, like, especially, I think, you know, if they're old enough, they coming from a time where black people aren't supposed to read. you know, and it's funny because me and my girl, we talking about this, you know, literacy, the ability to read and get knowledge, you know, that's something that has been kept from various people for various years, especially black people. Not, well, I shouldn't say especially, but including black people. And, you know, it's a way to keep you ignorant and subservient, because if you can't read and get knowledge for yourself from a, you know, particular source, you know, you have to ask someone who can read to tell you, you know, what it is and what's going on, and you just have to take that word for it. So I guess by you reading and writing and really getting into these various books on various topics, it's like, you know, oh, he's reading, he's going to find out the truth. And then when you think about the types of things that you are reading and the truths that you are finding out and unearthing every day, you know, about the things that you're studying, you know, some of it is kind of contrary to what, you know, we've been taught coming up. And either that or it's something that was never taught coming up, or it's something that's hidden that, you know, nobody wants you to know because it, you know, contradicts everything that, you know, society, or everything that kind of keeps society going. So it's like now they look at you as, you know, you're not going to take their word for it. You're going to find out what the word is yourself. And, you know, like you said before, that's one of the most threatening things is an educated black man.
Yeah, man, it's like, I mean, and you know, of course, that's one of like the primary sayings you'll hear a conscious black man say. But I mean, seriously, it's one thing you're walking down the street, but if you have books stacked on a table and you're writing, and you have a book, like a whole bunch of books open, it's a whole other story. Like I think they'd rather have me like point a gun at their face or some shit. Sometimes. Because
then they can say, "I told you so."
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, like, thinking about the books that I've been, like, carrying around with me lately, you know, like, The Slave Community by John Blassingame, or, Black Majority, Black Slaves and Indian Masters, and all these different types of books on various institutions of slavery in the country in the 19th century. And, you know, it's interesting, too, because, you know, I'm, like, the only person that's really focusing on it in my classes right now. And me personally, I think it also kind of goes back to, I guess, you know, like, you know, just, like, the different regions that we come from. And, you know, like, certain things that people are studying, you know, they have like a lot of questions for various people, but usually when I do something, like when I have, I present or whatever like that in my classes, I don't really get a lot of, questions because I don't think they really know too much about what I'm talking about. And I think that alone is an issue, especially what I sent you earlier.
Yeah, man, that was, quite disturbing.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people have a long way to go. I don't know, when I read that, it was like, you know, college isn't for everyone. But, I don't know, like, it's just interesting to see, like, the flow of, you know, I was just thinking, you know, when you were talking about the types of books and how you might be at Starbucks and you might be the only black person in there, one day somebody's going to call the cops on you, or they're going to call Homeland Security on you. And they're going to put you on a list. Like, you're going to fuck around, end up on that airport list to where you have to get that extra search every time you, you know, hop on a plane.
Well, I mean, I've been extra searched once in my life.
Oh, man. Because, like, I think Talib Kweli said he was extra search because of books that he had been checking out from the library or something like that, or ordering off of Amazon.
What the? They can, well, I was about to say they can do that type of shit, but well, of course they can.
Yeah, they keep records of all that. You know, what type of books you're getting, and, you know, I guess if you hit that flag too many times, you know, you're going to be under watch. So.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I guess we might as well go to hip hop, since a lot of times this is where it all boils down to, when hip hop kind of grew from this type of resentment from the establishment anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like something that hasn't really been talked about, but I think it's like a really important step when it comes to, I guess, the civil rights of hip hop artists and their artistry, is the Insane Clown Posse, and how they I know you probably weren't expecting that, but how they filed a lawsuit against the FBI for them being on the list of gangs.
Oh yeah.
And I looked at like an article for like preparing for an episode of the podcast. This was kind of before the riots happened, and what they were saying is that because of what the FBI has done, they've seen like a lower attendance at the gathering of the Juggalos, and they've had to move it to a smaller venue. And I think in like 2013 or 2014, I think it's 2013. They lost about $700,000 in revenue.
Damn.
And so they're blaming the FBI for it, and they say they're going to keep fighting the case until they win. But then but then they had that, and they had like some type of incident where two Juggalos, they burned like the ITP tattoo off some other guy because they felt as though he didn't deserve it.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
That's scary. Like, you see like pictures of him. That's just scary. Oh my God.
I mean, that's when people take being a fan of someone in the movement, and they just take that way too far.
Yeah.
People start to idolize these artists and everything to the point where they're almost deities to them, and their philosophies are like, scripture for people, and, they just start to do wild things. I guess it goes into, a lot of times people just can't think for themselves. Like, I think people get trained to take in information and not really think about it critically, but they just take in information and move accordingly to that. And I don't know, that's just crazy to me.
I mean, yeah, man. And that's why, I've been kind of talking about the idea of quiet protest. I think almost every other episode, like if everyone had some type of, conscience when it came to certain injustices and just, how this institution has been built over time, over a course of several hundred years, they would understand way better, and I think they would walk around differently. They would interact differently with, with people, with white people who treat them a certain way. And that's another reason why sometimes, I mean, I'm still on the fence about the rioting. I mean, like CVS, you did bring up a good point saying, it's a CVS that like a lot of people can access, and they really don't have access to like another one. And we know how, various foods and just how fucked up the black community is, health-wise, that they need the pills anyway, so that's really not helping how people get their medicine, which is very important.
Yeah. And, I'm sure they employed, teenagers and stuff, probably from the area or not too far away, who, won't have jobs anymore.
Yeah, man, I mean, that too. And, I'm just thinking that maybe if the great majority had some type of conscience, this would have been handled a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes into, the preparation and the organization where I guess, this thing popped off so randomly or, just out the blue kind of, that there wasn't time for that. But I do agree with you that, some type of increase in knowledge and consciousness of the people would make them handle it better. And I'll take it even further. I think that knowledge and consciousness would change. Well, I can't even say that. I was going to say knowledge and consciousness would change the community to where, we would have certain things established already. Like, we would have black businesses. We would have people who own their own property and own their own land and stuff like that, to where there's really no incentive to do any of this type of stuff, And, we can have our own community and flourish as, the Conscious Brothers dream. But, and, my girl was just telling me, I guess reminding me about, Black Wall Street and the Tulsa riots. And, I just watched a video about that, and basically, how they built Black Wall Street and also known as Little Africa in, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and how, they had, plumbing and, before, like, a lot of white communities, and they had movie theaters, and they basically had, a very thriving community. And they said that, a dollar circulated in that community, X amount of times before it left. And everything was all good until the Klan basically came in and destroyed it and killed 300 people and burned it to the ground. And then they tried to rebuild, but then they passed a law saying that you can't build anything here unless you make it flame-proof.
Yeah.
So the people just said, fuck it. And I think there's a history of whenever we get together and try to build something, of it being torn down by, the government or white people or, just, I don't want to say white people, I'll say institutionalized racism or systemic racism, to where people are just like, fuck it now, Because, like, every time we do something, it's going to get knocked down some type of way. So, I don't know, like, whenever we try to get some type of consciousness or something like that, they just remind you that you're still a nigga. I guess another example for that is when Henry Louis Gates was arrested for trying to get into his own house. And it's like, how much more consciousness can you have?
Yeah.
Nigga.
I mean, it's, and I based a lot of this off, like, the protests that happened here, and, all of a sudden I see people, wearing various, shirts about being unheard and, something about black people. And in my head, I'm like, I haven't seen these, before, other than, this one incident. And I just knew they were just going to disappear once everything was said and done, after the cameras stopped rolling and everyone left. And I was pretty much ready. And, in my head, I'm thinking that if you can, I'm not saying like every day, but if you can, like, just put on that shirt, every now and again, and I mean, like, everybody, like a lot of, black people, especially young black people. So to give, people a sense of, what they know what time it is or something like that.
Yeah.
It could be really effective in trying to curb certain things that do go on, and we wouldn't have these crazy riots where, essentially they're just fucking up black businesses. And that's the one thing that people have been talking about since, the 19th century.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess we would go into that level of consciousness and that type of mind state that you're talking about. Where does that begin? Because, where do you even start to implement that? Because, I mean, you know how it is out here.
I know.
Like,
I don't know, maybe if the rioters, they should have just, looted the libraries. Maybe it would have helped some, a little bit.
maybe it would have. I don't know. The library too, though. That's an important community resource, and I'm glad nothing happened to it because that's a safe place for kids to go after school. It's a place where they can, might be able to access the internet and use it for whatever they need to use it for. And a place where they can get some books if they're so inclined.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. I guess it comes back to what we were talking about before, which is, I feel like every time we diagnose a problem and we get into it and we figure out the causes and the effects and all this other type of stuff and we're all in agreement, it's like, what's the solution? And then you just came up with a solution, but then it's like, how can we implement it?
Yeah.
And it's like almost impossible roadblocks and stuff like that. Like, it used to be that you could increase consciousness in a group of people through rap music. But now, niggas ain't trying to hear that shit, man. Like,
that's true.
Niggas are listening to Young Thug.
And what did Young Thug say earlier?
He said what?
I didn't know. I was going to say, what did he say earlier that you were telling me?
Oh, man. He said,